I'm in my early 20s. About 2 years ago, I decided to move out on my own for the first time. It was supposed to be a fresh start, freedom. But soon, that freedom started to feel unsafe. You see, I hardly knew any of my neighbors. No friendly faces, no one to look out for me. If something strange happened, who would even notice? That thought stayed in the back of my mind like a shadow. One summer afternoon, I noticed a man walking his dog behind my house. Nothing unusual. There's a shared green space behind the apartments. His dog was adorable. My cat would often play with his dog through the glass door. They'd paw at the glass, chasing each other, playful like little kids. It almost felt wholesome. Then, one evening, I was sitting outside smoking on my porch. The dog ran up to me, tail wagging, begging for attention. That was the first time I actually spoke to the man. His name was Leon. Leon seemed polite, even a little shy. We started talking casually whenever we crossed paths. I thought it was nice to have someone around, someone friendly. But Leon had other plans. At first, I thought Leon was just a bit too friendly, but harmless. He smiled a lot, laughed at my jokes, and always found a reason to talk a little longer. Then came the comments. He would say things like, "You should come over for a drink sometime," or, "We'd make a good pair, you know." I laughed it off at first. Told him I wasn't really looking for anything like that. I even said it straight to his face. I'm not interested in dating or anything else. I thought he'd take the hint. But no. Every single time we spoke after that, he brought it up, joking at first, then asking more seriously, "Why not? I'm a good guy. You'll see." I started getting irritated. It felt like every conversation turned into him trying to get me inside his house, or him asking if he could come inside mine. I said no, every single time. I blamed it on COVID. Told him I was being cautious. He acted like he understood, but I could see the disappointment on his face every time I refused. Soon, even that excuse didn't stop him. He started inviting himself over, just assuming I'd say yes. I always said no. Then one evening, he stepped it up a notch. I was outside smoking when Leon came over. With a bottle of wine and 2 glasses, he smiled and said, "You have to try this. It's amazing." I looked at the bottle. It was already opened. The screw cap was twisted back on, but I could tell it had been opened before. And the wine was filled right up to the top, almost too full. I felt a strange chill down my spine. Leon poured 2 glasses, and without missing a beat told me to drink. I felt uneasy, but I didn't want to seem rude. After all, Leon poured himself a glass too, right? It's not like he was handing me a drink and not having any himself. Still, something about the way he kept watching me, waiting for me to take that first sip, felt wrong. I pretended, lifted the glass, brought it close to my lips, and faked a small sip. That's nice," I said, forcing a smile. But Leon, he didn't even pretend. He leaned closer, smiled, and said, "Come on, drink a real sip, you'll love it." I told him I wasn't really a drinker, that I liked to take it slow. Then I noticed he hadn't even touched his glass, so I said, "Well, you haven't taken a sip either. Go ahead." He smiled, reached for his glass, and knocked it over. Wine spilled into the grass. He laughed it off like it was nothing. "Oops. Guess I'm clumsy." Then, right away, "Your turn. Take a sip." I didn't move. "You should pour yourself another," I said. "I don't want to drink alone." He did. Poured another glass for himself. But again, he didn't drink. A few moments later, he leaned in and said, "Your turn now." At this point, the alarm bells in my head were deafening. I smiled and said, "You know, it feels a little weird that you haven't had a single sip." He laughed nervously, said he was just taking it slow, claimed he didn't drink much. Then he added, "I've seen you with your friends, Drinking shots, beers. You can handle it better than me. That hit me hard. He's been watching me? I froze. Did he really just say that? I've seen you with your friends. How would he know? I barely even had people over, and when I did, it was inside my house behind closed doors. Leon didn't live near me, not right next door, not even in the same building. His place was almost half a block away. There's no way he could see my backyard. No way he could see inside my windows. Unless he'd been watching me, following me, or worse, waiting outside in the dark when I didn't even know. I felt my skin crawl. I took a deep breath and told him flat out, I'm not drinking anything. This all feels off. He put on a smile, that fake harmless kind of smile, and said, oh, come on, don't be paranoid. I'm just clumsy with drinks. Clumsy? Sure. Then he said something else, something that made my stomach twist. You know, you don't have to worry. I'm friends with the maintenance guys here. I used to work for the complex. I know pretty much everyone who lives around. So now, he knows people who have keys to every apartment. He used to work here. I felt sick. I told him again, I'm not drinking. This doesn't feel right. And then, once again, he poured himself a glass, and once again, spilled it. At this point, I'd had enough. I picked up the bottle, poured the rest of the wine into his glass, and said, let's drink together. On 3, we raised our glasses. 1, 2, 3, and finally, Leon took a sip. I didn't. I tilted my glass slightly and let it spill into the grass. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was over. Leon had finally taken a sip. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just overthinking everything. But deep down, I knew better. 2 nights later, I was outside on my porch having a smoke when I heard footsteps. Leon. He walked straight up to me, eyes dark, face tense. And then, he exploded. He started shouting, why won't you date me? Why won't you sleep with me? What's wrong with me? His voice echoed in the quiet night. I tried to stay calm. I said, Leon, I've been honest with you from the start. I told you I wasn't looking for anything like that. It's not about you. I'm just not interested in anyone right now. But he didn't care. He shouted louder, started complaining about his ex-girlfriend, how she treated him badly, and then he started talking about her dog. I stood there stunned as Leon admitted he used to abuse that poor animal. Said he wouldn't feed it, wouldn't give it water. He would kick it hard whenever it made a mess inside the house. He laughed as he told me, like it was some funny story. I looked down at the little dog sitting by his feet, the same sweet dog that used to play with my cat. Now I knew why it always looked scared. Now I knew why it clung to me whenever I was around. That poor creature was still living in hell. I felt disgusted. With him, with myself, forever talking to him. I cut him off mid-sentence, told him I had friends waiting for me, and walked away. I didn't look back. I thought that would be the end of it. That after I walked away, Leon would finally leave me alone. I was wrong. Instead, things got worse. It started with text messages, long strings of nonsense. Letters smashed together to make no sense at all. XVPT, QAS, XX, LMN, then hi, then more gibberish. And it wouldn't stop. Every time I checked my phone, there it was. At first I ignored it, blocked his number. But Leon found other ways. He started texting me from different numbers. Sometimes, he would text me, I know you're home, I saw you walking around, or I see your car in the parking lot. I felt my blood run cold. I started wondering, was he watching me right now? Then came the toys, his dog's toys. He started throwing them onto my porch. At first I thought it was an accident, then it happened again. And again, he wasn't just throwing them, He was standing outside my porch for hours, in the cold, in the rain, sometimes in the snow, just standing there, waiting. I realized something horrifying. In his twisted mind, he thought if he waited long enough, I'd come outside to smoke and maybe talk to him. But I didn't. Whenever I saw him outside, I'd go out the front way and disappear. I wasn't giving him the satisfaction. The more I ignored him, the bolder he became. I started noticing strange things. Sometimes, I'd look out my window late at night, and I'd see a shadow in the distance, standing still, too far to make out a face, but close enough that I knew it was him. Other times, I'd hear soft tapping on my window. Not knocking, just tapping, like someone gently brushing their fingers against the glass. I'd freeze. My heart would pound in my chest, and I'd be too afraid to look. I'd sit there for hours, holding my breath, praying it was all in my head, but it wasn't. Sometimes, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and see my porch light flicker on. Motion sensor. It only turned on when someone walked by, and I knew Leon was there, watching, waiting. He never knocked, never said a word, just stood there, like a shadow that refused to leave. Looking back, I realized there had been warning signs all along, red flags I ignored, things Leon said, things I brushed off, thinking maybe it was just a cultural difference, or maybe I was overreacting. Leon had told me once that English was his third language, that America was the third country he'd lived in. So, I thought maybe the strange things he said, the creepy comments, were just lost in translation. But now, I know better. He wasn't misunderstood, he was dangerous. Like the time he said, "If you're ever drunk, I'll make sure you're safe." Or when he joked, "You should sleep over sometime. I wouldn't mind having a roommate." He would say things like that, and then laugh it off. But there was always something in his eyes, something that made me feel cold. And the worst part? I tried to be polite. I tried to believe the best in people. I gave him the benefit of the doubt, again and again. But predators like Leon, they count on that. They want you to second-guess yourself. And I did, until now. One night I was sitting inside, lights off, curtains drawn, just trying to relax after a long day. And then, my phone buzzed. I picked it up. It was a message from Leon. What did I do wrong? I stared at the screen. He followed it up with another. Have I disrespected you in any way? My heart sank. I hadn't spoken to him, hadn't replied, since the night he screamed at me about not wanting to sleep with him, since he admitted abusing his ex-girlfriend's dog. And yet, here he was, still trying to play the victim, still acting like I was the one who owed him an explanation. I wanted to reply, to tell him exactly what he did wrong, to list every creepy, twisted thing he'd ever said or done. But then I stopped myself. Why give him that? Why give him ideas on how to hide his behavior better next time? With someone else, I realized he wasn't looking for closure. He wasn't sorry. He was looking for control, and I wasn't going to give it to him. I put my phone down, and I never answered. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak, every sound outside, wondering, was he out there? I started to replay everything in my head. The whine, the fake friendliness, the staring, the stalking, the way he watched me, the way he refused to take a drink himself. How could I have been so blind? But the truth is, I wasn't blind. I saw the red flags. I felt them. In my gut. I just ignored them because I didn't want to seem rude. Because I didn't want to accuse someone unfairly. Because I didn't want to believe someone could be that dangerous. But predators like Leon, They know that. They rely on it. They push your boundaries slowly, step by step, until suddenly, you're trapped. And when you finally realize it, it's too late. That's why, if your gut is screaming at you, listen. Always. People always say, if you feel unsafe, just move, like it's that simple. But moving isn't cheap. Finding a new place, paying deposits, packing everything up, starting over. It's not something I could afford, not right away. So I stayed. But staying came with a price. I couldn't relax in my own home anymore. I started keeping the lights off at night, afraid that if he saw the glow through the curtains, he'd come back. I stopped sitting on my porch, stopped going outside to smoke. I even parked my car in different spots, hoping maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't realize I was home. I lived like a prisoner, in my own house, always looking over my shoulder, always checking the locks, twice, 3 times, sleeping with something heavy next to my bed. I hated it. I hated him for making me live this way. And still, I wasn't sure what he'd do next. I wasn't sure how far he'd go. But I knew one thing, Leon wasn't done with me yet. Days passed, weeks. I tried to tell myself, maybe he finally gave up. But deep down, I knew better. Because even when I didn't see him, I felt him. That heavy feeling, like I was never really alone, like there were eyes on me, always watching. Sometimes, I'd come home from work and find things moved around on my porch. A small dog toy, a cigarette butt I didn't smoke, a rock that wasn't there before. Little things, but enough to know he'd been there, and not once, not twice, but over and over again. I didn't know what scared me more, the fact that he kept coming back, or the fact that he never knocked, never spoke, never tried to reach out again. He was just silently reminding me that he hadn't gone anywhere, that he was still around, still watching, and maybe still waiting. One night, I heard something. It was late, after midnight. I was sitting in my living room, TV on low, trying to pretend everything was normal. Then, a sound, faint, soft, like whispering. I muted the TV, held my breath. There it was again, a soft voice, just outside my window. I couldn't make out the words, but it was there. I stood up slowly, moved closer to the window, and then, silence, like whoever it was, knew I was listening. I stayed frozen in place, afraid to look out, afraid to move. I waited, and after a few long minutes, I finally peeked through the curtain. Nothing, just empty darkness. But the feeling in my chest, the tight knot in my stomach, that stayed. Because even if I couldn't see him, I knew Leon was there. He was always there. A few days after the whispering, I noticed something else, something worse. I came home late from work. It was dark, cold. I walked up to my door and reached for the handle. It was unlocked. My heart stopped. I was sure I had locked it. I always locked it. It was a habit now. Check it 3 times before leaving. But that night, it wasn't just unlocked. The door was slightly open, just a crack. I froze. Every part of me screamed not to go inside, but I couldn't help it. I slowly pushed the door open. Everything looked normal. Nothing was missing, nothing was broken. But I knew something was wrong. I checked the lock. It worked fine. No sign of forced entry. And that's when it hit me. Leon said he used to work with the maintenance crew. Leon had access. Leon had keys. I felt sick. I locked the door, this time with a chair pushed against it. I sat there all night, wide awake, staring at the door. Waiting. It was around 3 a.m. I hadn't slept. I sat in the dark, lights off, phone in my hand, listening, and then I heard it. A voice, low, just outside my door. I couldn't make out every word, but I heard my name, spoken slowly, almost like a whisper. My name opened the door. My blood turned to ice. I held my breath. Tried not to move. I prayed. Let this be a nightmare. Let me wake up. But I was already awake. The voice came again. I know you're in there. I covered my mouth with my hand. Terrified that even the sound of my breathing would give me away. He stood there. For how long, I don't know. Minutes, maybe hours. Then, footsteps, fading into the night. I didn't sleep at all. I didn't even blink, because I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The next morning, I was still sitting there, exhausted, but I couldn't move. I didn't feel safe leaving the house. I didn't feel safe inside it either. I kept asking myself, what does he want? Why won't he leave me alone? But deep down, I already knew the answer. It wasn't about friendship. It wasn't about dating. It was about power, control, and fear. He wanted me afraid. He wanted me looking over my shoulder. And it was working. I stopped going to work, stopped seeing friends. I was too scared to even step outside. The walls of my home felt like a cage. Every noise made me jump. Every shadow made me freeze. And Leon, he was still out there, waiting, watching, like a hunter circling its prey. It happened 3 nights later. I hadn't stepped outside in days. I barely slept. I barely ate. I just sat there, waiting for the next nightmare. And then, it came. Around midnight, I heard a sound on my porch. Not footsteps. Not whispering, scraping, slow, heavy, scraping like metal against wood. I froze. And then, a soft thud. I couldn't take it anymore. I forced myself to peek through the curtain. And there, lying on my porch, a dead bird. Its wings spread, its neck twisted, a string tied around its legs. I stared at it, frozen. I didn't need a note. I didn't need words. This was a message from Leon, and the message was clear. You're mine. I stood there, staring at that dead bird, and something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to be his victim. Not anymore. I grabbed my phone and called the police for the first time. I told them everything. The stalking, the watching, the texts, the door left open. The whispering, and now, the dead bird on my porch. They took it seriously. An officer arrived within minutes. He took photos, wrote everything down, and then he said something that sent a chill down my spine. We know this guy. You're not the first one. I felt my stomach drop. He wasn't just some lonely neighbor. Leon was a predator, and I wasn't his only target. But I decided right then, I wasn't going to be his next victim. Not now, not ever. The police promised they would patrol the area. They said they'd talk to Leon. But deep down, I knew that wouldn't stop him. Predators like him, they don't scare easily. And I was right. The very next night, I heard it again. Footsteps outside my window. This time, I didn't hide. I stood up, walked straight to the door, and opened it. Leon was standing there, his eyes cold, empty. We stared at each other for what felt like forever. Then I said, "The police know everything." For the first time, I saw something flash in his eyes. Fear. He didn't say a word, he just turned around and walked away. But I knew better than to think it was over. With people like Leon, it's never really over. It's been months since that night. Leon never came back. At least, not that I know of, but I still don't feel safe. I still check my locks 3 times. I still glance over my shoulder when I walk to my car. I still jump at every strange sound in the night. Because fear like that, it doesn't just go away. I've learned something important. Sometimes, evil doesn't look like a monster. Sometimes, it smiles at you. walks its dog, acts like a friend, but behind that smile is something dark, something dangerous, and you have to listen to your gut, even when it feels rude. Even when you don't want to believe it. Because the truth is, if I had trusted my instincts sooner, I might have saved myself a lot of fear. So this is my warning. If someone feels wrong, they probably are. Trust yourself, stay safe, and never, ever ignore the red flags.